All right, radio listeners, today we have a special guest with Mike, who is a representative of Fired Up Kansas. And Mike, we'd like to welcome you to the Conscience of Kansas radio program.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it. Glad to be here.
I was wondering if you could tell our listeners a little bit about your organization, what you're doing, what you're trying to accomplish.
Well, me and my wife started our group back on January 11th last year. It started as basically a project to raise awareness about marijuana legalization, and it's turned into an actual movement. We're more than 6,000 fans now and have over 1,000 followers, and we've got a bunch of followers on Twitter. And our goal is to just raise awareness to the fact that marijuana is basically harmless when you think about substances that are currently legal. That, as like alcohol, for instance, causes 100,000 deaths a year in the United States alone. Tobacco, nearly 500,000. Whereas in thousands of years of documented use, nobody's ever died from using marijuana.
I suppose
it's impossible to overdose on it. So our goal is to raise awareness and see if we can't get the attention of our legislators to actually put this thing in a market where it's supposed to be, instead of on a black market where anybody can get it, including kids.
So who all do you want smoking it here in Kansas? I mean, do you want to put it on par with alcohol, where they 21 years old's the cap, or do you want little kids smoking marijuana? What are you wanting to accomplish as far as legalization?
Well, first of all, no advocate wants kids smoking pot.
I hope not.
our feeling is, at 21, at the very least, a 21-year-old should be able to go inside a smoke shop style outlet and purchase a quantity, whatever the quantity, up to an ounce, similar to Colorado, and use it for their own personal use, whether it be for medicine or for recreation or for a sacramental purpose or whatever.
Okay. My question would be, and I really appreciate coming on and talking about these issues. Obviously, I take the other side of the issue. I don't think it should be legalized. I don't see it as a harmless drug. I worked on the drug task force here in Kansas for years and dealt with lots and lots of marijuana users and marijuana sellers. But I appreciate you coming on. But my issue would be, first, government studies, government programs, they take a different position on, is marijuana hard on your system. If you go to the National Institute of Drug Abuse, they're going to tell you that it affects short-term memory, it increases heart rate, and that it varies from person to person how it affects you. But it's things like suicide, depression, psychotic episodes. They go through a litany of those. Is it your position that the government studies are wrong?
Absolutely, they're wrong. They're still stuck on the reefer madness craze from back in the 30s and 40s. I mean, it's just absolutely untrue. There is no psychotic episodes. There's no suicidal attempts from marijuana use. It is not a gateway drug. It is harmless, and there's nothing about it that can hurt you. It has tremendous medicinal value. If marijuana is so bad, why does our government have a patent on it?
Well, I would tell you this. I would agree that it's hypocritical of the government to outlaw marijuana and then to sell a tax stamp to people if you want to avoid a civil penalty. I thought that was
there's another thing. I'm glad you mentioned that. I just recently bought some tax stamps at the Topeka Capitol building not long ago. I walked in there, bought them, no problem. It's asinine. It's hypocritical. It makes no sense. An adult should not be told they cannot use a substance that is far less harmful than alcohol. The president himself has recently come out publicly and said it is no worse than alcohol. Then a few days later, he did another interview and clarified that it is safer than alcohol.
Well,
and as far as the government, why in the world is one organization, the ONDCP, why in the world are they required by law to oppose legalization any way possible? Why are they required by law to oppose it? That makes no sense. So they are basically required by law to lie about this plant. It doesn't even meet the criteria of being classified as a drug, much less a controlled substance, Schedule 1.
Well, at least we come together on the tax stamp issue, because I think that is, it's good to come together on something. I don't know that I buy into the idea that if it's natural, it's good for you. I mean, uranium comes from nature. We don't put that into our system. I think we can discern that there are things in nature that don't do you good. And I also would challenge you that that marijuana and the usage of it can be a victimless crime. We had a little girl here in Salina, Kansas, that just got sent to prison for vehicular homicide. She killed her friend at the wheel after smoking marijuana, convicted by a jury of her peers. And, that family had a loss that's real. I hate to cut you off, but but before going too far into that, I would have to want to look into that case and find out if there was something other than marijuana in that person's system. Well, I agree.
I would bet that there is.
But I have looked into it. The girls, they had marijuana and they had one wine cooler apiece, and that's what they had in their system. They got on the road. If you've ever watched,
that they only had one wine cooler.
They gave testimony. They gave their own confessions of what they had drank before they left the party.
You think they're going to admit they had more than one wine cooler?
So you think they would cut it low on the alcohol but admit the marijuana?
Well, they could simply do a piss test to find marijuana.
Exactly, which they did. They tested them and found marijuana in their system. My deal is,
nobody in that situation is going to admit to being drunk.
Well, it doesn't matter as far as DUI. Marijuana or alcohol can get you the conviction for DUI here in the state of Kansas. So that would be immaterial. If they're going to get, if she's going to get, as part of her plea agreement, a DUI, if she tested for marijuana or if she tested for alcohol, which she would have been under the legal limit for alcohol in her test. I mean, so in other words, when you hear cases of people getting behind the wheel stoned and killing people, you don't see them with any accountability?
People don't get behind the wheel stoned and kill people.
They don't?
That just doesn't happen. I'm going to have to disagree with your case. I'd have to see it for myself and look into the case for myself before I can actually have that discussion, because I'm not going to buy it.
Well, just
people
for your reference,
get stoned and kill people. That
wow.
never happens.
Wow. Well, then the girl's name was Tara Pfeiffer. She was 18. The girl she killed was Journey Moss. It was right here in Salina where we're doing that. I used a local case, so you wouldn't assume I was trying to grab something from Timbuktu, a local case for us. It went through the court systems. She went through a jury of her peers. She was found guilty of...
Send me a link to it. Send me some kind of information on it so I can look into it myself.
Okay.
Because I've never heard of it happening.
You've never heard of a DUI...
I've heard of claims, but it's never been proven.
Okay.
People just don't kill people if they're smoking pot. It just doesn't happen.
So you don't. Well, if you believe that, then you would have to say that THC, the drug in marijuana, doesn't affect your coordination or your balance or impair your judgment, your cognitive skills. I mean, are you going that far?
It doesn't. Using the word impaired doesn't fit in marijuana use, because that's not what marijuana does to you. It does affect short-term memory. It may the most side effects you get out of marijuana is laughter and a euphoric feeling. You're not impaired to where you don't know what you're doing. That never happens with anybody.
So no one has hallucinations. No one has
no
psychotic breaks.
Not.
No
Marijuana does not cause you hallucinations.
Wow. Well, I must have met some liars when I was on the drug task force, because we would go in and we
Okay,
would.
the drug task force is required to go with these things. You know that as well as I do.
Well, I mean, I'm telling you, I certainly the studies from the government that are just legion are things that we look at.
Are completely made up.
But I can tell you what my own eyeballs saw in my own conversations. I've had many conversations with marijuana users, people that just smoke all day long, and they sell, and we ended up busting them on the drug task force. And I can believe my eyes. I can believe their inability, to recall anything. These guys are burnt out. They're burnt out.
What should I call you, Paul or Dr. Ibbetson?
You can call me Paul.
Paul, I would have to say, I would have to challenge you. We can drive right across the border into Colorado where it's legal.
Right.
I will challenge you right here and now. We'll meet out there. I will smoke pot all day long, and you will never see me stagger. You will never see me fumble my words, and you will never see me piss on myself. You will never see me drive a car crooked. It just doesn't happen.
But you're equating. You have to understand, Mike. If you say that to me, all right, I'll believe you. I'll believe you on face value. But the studies don't say that everyone's affected equally. It says that people are affected differently based on their age, based on a lot of different factors.
Well, sure, so does alcohol.
So for you to say that, well, I can go smoke and it doesn't hurt me. Well, you and I can go into a room here in Salina, Kansas. We can play Russian roulette, and it may not affect us both the same way. But if you are looking at societal
That's
changes,
a hell of a comparison,
well,
Paul. I mean,
I tell you what, this little girl that died on the highway, there's death there too. And so you have to take it seriously. And my deal is, if we're going to do that, we have to look at what are the worst ramifications, not the best case scenarios. Because you're right, some people are functioning drunks. But man, I have pulled a lot of drunks dead off the highway as a police officer, and I've also
sure you did.
I pulled a whole lot of innocent people dead off the highway. So we have to look at the worst. What's the worst case scenario with driving on the road impaired? That's the same thing we have to do with marijuana. We have to say
the worst case scenario with driving on the road while the typical term is high on marijuana. The worst case scenario is a person's going to drive slower because they're more what's the word, careful about what they're doing.
So in other words, if they're high, they're going to be thinking ahead. That's what the drunks tell me, though, Mike.
That's what most people do.
That's what the drunks tell me. That's what the guys hitting the wild turkey tell me too. Well, I drive safer when I'm drunk. But we see that their abilities to make judgments with their muscle memory and with their mind of thinking ahead. Am I drunk when I'm going out with that extra drink at happy hour in before I go out the door? They make bad decisions. I can't think that a drug like THC is going to make you a smarter person when all of the research behind it says it influences.
Not all of the research. No. As a matter of fact, there was an insurance company right over in Denver, Colorado, that did a recent study that indicates that people that smoke marijuana are actually safer drivers. An insurance company did this study.
Well, time will tell, because we know.
I'll send it to you.
Yeah, do it. Time will tell us in Colorado, because you know and I know what they're doing here. This dope move in Colorado is brand new. The ramifications of it, whether it's going to be positive or negative, we can't say until a little time passes, right? I mean, so whether or not it will be good, whether or not the people.
Let me point out one thing about the market in Colorado. One thing that's very important that people are overlooking, including yourself. There are no children lined up at those pot shops to buy weed.
Yeah.
It has been taken off of the street and put in a controlled setting.
Go and look
regulated setting.
Look at the states that first started the movements. If you go to Michigan and you go to some of these states that first started either the municipal outlets or the legal outlets where you can buy if you're a certain age, you can track crimes of people that commit crimes, whether they're good or bad, whatever. They can take that stuff, they can buy it legally, and then go sell it for the higher profit, as was done before it was legalized, to teenagers and to whoever. There's those arrests those crimes have been documented. So you can't say, well, if we legalize marijuana, there's not going to be any more crimes related to that, because people that commit crimes are going to commit crimes.
That's true. If they're going to commit a crime, they're going to commit a crime. No matter whether it's pot or alcohol or tobacco or whatever. If they're going to commit a crime, they're going to do it no matter what. It makes no sense in this country to criminalize a person for doing nothing more than our last three presidents admitted to doing, but laughed off like it was nothing. One even had the nerve to say he didn't inhale, which sounds identical to the phrase, "I did not have sexual intercourse with that woman."
Yeah, which means that liars are liars. I'll give you that. You know, Clinton did a lot of things below board, but you notice those guys, when they started to get into mainstream society, when they started to move up into the business world as they were running for office, they weren't token then, though, were they? They stopped that.
How do you know that?
Oh, if you want to, they didn't have it on their platform. You gave me his platform.
Not. They're not going to admit to doing it while they're running for president. Goddamn, are you serious?
And that brings us to Kansas. That brings us to Kansas values. Presidents won't admit to it, even if they were, because society at large doesn't accept marijuana. If they did,
at large does.
Well, then, hell, come on, Mike. If they did, Mike, come on. If they did accept it, then your Bill Clintons and your others was out there saying, "I'm still token now, vote for me as president." Right? That's your logic. I mean, come on. If society,
that's a politician's position, man.
Well, who are they facing? Who's voting for them?
They're scared of the subject all over the country.
Why? Why?
But there are politicians all over the country that are not afraid of the subject. That's why it has already happened in Colorado. That's why it's happened in Washington, and that's why it has happened in 20 other states.
I believe
because politicians are on board.
Well, they're not in Kansas. They're not in our state.
We just introduced a tax and regulate bill.
Who are our pro marijuana politicians right now?
No. Let's not say pro marijuana. Let's say
okay.
Let's say instead of pro marijuana, let's say sensible reform.
What's wrong with pro marijuana? What's wrong with that? How's that a dirty word?
I'm pro marijuana. Okay? Our group is pro marijuana.
Okay.
A particular politician may not be so much pro marijuana, but more for marijuana reform, because the current law simply doesn't work. The current law is simply a burden to American taxpayers at the tune, in Kansas alone, $1.3 billion. Last year alone, they spent enforcing a law that doesn't work.
Why can't we just say it? Why can't we just say it straight? You know, I'm for it, I'm against it. Dancing with the Stars doesn't really fly with me. Instead of saying, well, I'm not pro marijuana, I'm just for reform, I'm for sensible stuff. If you're for it, you're for it. If you're not for it, you're not for it. Isn't that a fair deal? Isn't that?
I'm for marijuana. I enjoy marijuana.
All right. I'm against marijuana. I don't believe in marijuana. I think
that doesn't necessarily enjoy marijuana, doesn't necessarily want to smoke marijuana, but sees the fact that current law simply doesn't work, and believes that it should be changed. Now, whether it should be changed from and there's another thing I was going to point out. In Kansas, two recent polls, one showed 68% in favor, another showed 73% in favor. That was the Wichita Business Journal and the Emporia Gazette.
Who were they polling?
They were polling the public.
Well, I mean, the public's kind of a big word there, Mike.
Obviously, their readers, whoever was reading it and wanted to vote on it, voted on it.
Well, I'd have no problem personally, like with a lot of issues that don't get put to the polls. I'd have no problem with putting it to a vote here in Kansas, because I have confidence.
That's what I would love to do.
But the deal of it is, I don't know if it'll happen or not, but we do that, and we'll
to put it to a vote across the state in Kansas. Our legislators is going to have to do it just the same way they did it in 1948 for alcohol. They put it to a public vote, and the people approved the amendment to allow the retail sales of alcohol.
So you think if it did go to a vote, you really believe in conservative, Bible, traditional Kansas that you'd win that vote and we would go pro-marijuana?
I firmly believe we would. I firmly believe the vote would go at least 60% yes.
Wow, you're a great guy, Mike. I enjoy talking to you, but I think you're stoned right now, brother. I think you.
I'm not even close, man.
Have you ingested any marijuana brownies today?
I love these conversations.
Well, I mean, I would ask that question because I think you'd be shocked. I think it'd be the same thing as, a gay marriage issue in Kansas. They told us that would never change. That's the reason why we don't have an abortion law vote.
Which is also asinine, but that's another subject.
But the voters voted 70-30. So on that. And traditional values really rang out a lot more than liberals thought would happen. I bet it would be a sad day.
Well could be. If it did go to a public vote across the state, and we only got 40% yes. At least at that moment, we would know for absolute certainty that the public disagrees.
What do you mean? What do you mean?
From where we're at right now, from what we see, from our own experiences, from our own conversations all over the state of Kansas, because I work all over the state of Kansas, we are horrendously in support of this movement.
Again, I think you're deep in the wacky weeds, but I'll tell you why. Because this program airs over a third of the state.
I think you've been hanging out with prohibitionists too long.
Well, but this is my deal. This show airs over a third of the state, and I find 99% in opposition to this marijuana push. So maybe
there's other shows that find the same 99% in favor.
Well, again, I think that we have a disconnect. I have no problem though putting it to a vote. I just would say if you come out like you did on the marriage amendment,
we were going to agree, did you?
I knew we weren't, but I'm enjoying you more than I thought I would. Because you seem like a good guy. We can agree and disagree on issues. The free speech is really where the whole thing is at. But
sure.
If it did go and it voted and it went like traditional marriage where 70% were conservative values and the 30% didn't, then it would be definitive in one way or another.
Sure.
But I don't know what'll happen on it. I see marijuana as a dangerous drug. I do see it as a gateway drug. I see it as nothing positive and production wise.
I'm glad you mentioned gateway drug. The gateway theory has been debunked many times.
It hadn't been debunked.
Typically,
it's been debunked by
the smoking habit is on cigarettes.
The pro-marijuana syndicate has debunked it, but I don't think it's been debunked by reality. If you go and you interview these guys that are addicted to meth,
the smoking habit comes from tobacco.
Well, again,
I'll tell you this. This is a fact. I'm going to tell you a fact. Less than 1% of regular marijuana users go on to harder drugs. Less than 1%.
And where's this coming from? The high times? I mean, where's this coming from? Because the government studies say clearly it's an addictive drug. And definitely hundreds of interviews.
No addictive properties within the plant. None.
Hundreds of interviews with meth users, with LSD, cocaine users. Here in the state of Kansas, they tell you the life story. It started with marijuana. Why?
No,
Why would it have been a gateway drug? Because
tobacco and alcohol, because those are two legal substances.
Well, when these kids are kids, it's all illegal, and so these kids that get into drinking alcohol underage, they get into marijuana and others.
Their parents' beer or liquor from under the kitchen sink, or they start stealing pills out of the medicine cabinet, or they steal their parents' cigarettes. Then the next thing you know, they're getting pot at school because it's something better. So in their mind, they think it's something better.
So you're following the gateway with that logic. You're following the gateway.
But where it started was before marijuana, Paul.
But if people go from marijuana to meth, is there no responsibility to the people that provide and get that marijuana out there that those kids use? Accountability just doesn't seem to be the marijuana's big thing. It's blaming others. It's saying it's somebody else's fault. It's not true. It's a conspiracy. It's a bunch of lies. I hear that more often than not.
If a person is the kind of person that they're going to use drugs, they're going to use drugs no matter what the drug is. It doesn't mean that marijuana was the cause of it. And that's where you're going with it. You're blaming marijuana for harder drug use, and that's just not the case.
Well, should we legalize cocaine and meth? Should we legalize LSD?
In my opinion, how can you tell a person in America that they are not allowed to use any substance? That is their own body. How can you tell somebody they can't do it and then make them a criminal because they did?
Wow. That's interesting. Interesting.
We're talking about a person's right to choose, are we not?
So from Fired Up Kansas, you would be for regulating and selling meth at the pharmacy through the control.
Let's not go too far.
Well, you're legalizing it, brother. You're legalizing it. I mean, we got to have some. If it's going to be legalized, it's got to go through some system.
No, I personally take the position. I'm not going to tell you what you can and can't do. If you want to drink a bottle of Drano, hey, go for it. That's your business.
So, in other words, if someone wants to go down there to the pharmacy, get a prescription from the doctor for LSD or cocaine or for crank, then you're down with that. Because
Are you aware heroin and cocaine is used in normal everyday pharmaceuticals today? Are you aware of that? Let me mention a couple of them: hydrocodone, OxyContin.
Okay.
Are you aware these substances are in these drugs?
Yeah. I'm aware that we have all kinds of hard prescription drugs that are regulated. But my question is, do you want to continue to
regulating again?
Well, you said legalize it.
Or should we put people in jail?
You said legalize it, so I'm just taking it to its logical conclusion. If you're going to legalize it, I mean, where's the end of it? You know, Colorado wants to have fairs now where they grow and do their marijuana, and so where's the end? I think in Colorado, are we going to have our marijuana?
The 12th, something like that.
So these events, and so they're mainstreaming, and it's progressing into their culture. Now, if I'm wondering at what point will they have?
Marijuana is part of American culture.
Not mine, brother. Not mine. Not my culture. It's not part of mine.
That may not be your culture, but you do not have the right to push your opinion off on somebody else.
Really? I think the Constitution gives it to me in the first dadgum amendment, the freedom of speech. Come on now.
Okay. Freedom of speech is different than
that's my opinion.
Pushing your beliefs off on somebody else. This isn't about belief. This is about an individual. And if we're going to go so far as to talk about drug addiction, then drug addiction should be treated as a health issue, not a criminal issue.
Well, I mean, you just threw me into a gulag. You just threw me into a gulag. What you and me are doing right now is me sharing my opinions and my thoughts, what I would like to see the agenda of America. You're throwing yours out there, but you're just telling me I shouldn't have the right to do my side.
No. I'm talking about facts. You're talking about an opinion.
Yeah, but
There's a difference.
Oh, well, facts. I can show you. I've got a stack of facts here. I've got a stack of studies here. You just don't believe. You don't believe my facts. You reject my facts. But does that mean that your facts have more credence simply because they come from your perspective? That again, if we're going to do that, we might as well switch to the bourgeoisie and the proletariat. If one person's opinion and one person's interpretation of the data out there is better than another, if mine are lies and yours are truth, then just ship me off to a gulag now, because that's what they've done in the countries where they've implemented that. I say that my opinion is just as valid as yours. My belief system's just as valid, and we take it out here into the open debate of the public. We let people decide in the majority rule with states' rights. And that's why Kansas doesn't have marijuana. It's because Kansans don't want to have it as a majority. And the minority can still...
We don't have a legal market in Kansas because our not enough legislators are on board. If we had the same referendum in our Constitution that Colorado does, and we were allowed to do a statewide petition to actually get it on a state ballot, but it would happen, and it would be legal.
Who puts the representatives in? You say we don't have the right representatives in. Who puts the representatives in?
We don't
the
have
people.
Enough of them.
The voting public has put in a majority of conservative representatives. That's the will of the people. We have a representative republic. So you don't have enough representatives to get this in now because you don't have enough people voting for those reps. If we were California, I would say you're right, because the people put in a bunch of libs and they push it. And that's okay in California. I'm not trying to change.
We'll see what happens this next election.
We will. And listen, I ran out of time. We went way over. I enjoyed talking to you.
I enjoyed talking to you too, Paul.
And I don't want you to hate me or anything. I don't hate you. So I want you to know that right off the bat.
And I don't hate you. I'm not upset with you at all. I really enjoyed the conversation. Great.
It's been
really
great. We've been speaking to Mike from Fired Up Kansas. You can find them on the web at firedupkansas.com. And we'll have you on again if we have some major. Also on Facebook. And we have some something happens here in the Kansas related to this. I'll give you a buzz. We'll have you back on. We'll chat some more. Does that sound fair?
Anytime, Paul. Anytime.
Mike, thank you so much. Just have a great day.